Lovely to meet you.
Good to see
Thank you. Shane from
Good to see you, Shane.
Are we ready to go, guys? Well, thanks very much for talking to the Rockpit, and congratulations on the new album. It's awesome.
It's really out there, isn't it? I mean, you know, when I finally did listen to all the mixes and everything, and we put it in order, I realized that every single song, there's no songs that are similar on the album. They all go in 20 different directions.
Absolutely.
But I think that that's what makes it Alice Cooper, is the fact that it's the Alice voice and lyrics that make it Alice. And so, in A Nightmare, you go in a million different directions, so why not break the songs like that? You know, I mean, Bite Your Face Off is a 1965 Rolling Stones song. It should be. I mean, it feels like that.
And how do you feel Bob Ezrin brings to your sound and your vision?
Everything. Bob Ezrin knows more about Alice Cooper than I do. I mean, he and I created Alice, basically. We created Alice's thought pattern, the way he sings, what he thinks, what his sense of humor is. We really just sat down and literally created that from Love It to Death, Killer, School's Out, $1 Billion Babies, you know, all those albums. When you're writing those albums, you are actually creating the character while you're doing it. Because we would go, okay, here's the lyric on this, and we'd write it, and then all of a sudden I'd go, would Alice say that? You know, and he would go, no, Alice would not say that. Because, you know, that's not his character to say that. Okay, let's rewrite that. So we would always talk about Alice in the third person. It was like if I were going to write for Zorro, or if I were going to write for, you know, Jekyll and Hyde, I would say, okay, Jekyll would say this, Hyde would say it this way. So let's, you know, and that's how Alice is. Alice would say it this way, I would say it a different way.
And you and Bob obviously get along well?
I have never had so much fun in the studio. Bob and I are, you know, we bring out the worst in each other, which usually makes for a good album, because we both have a very dark sense of humor. And, you know, most of the time I would say, we should never do a disco song. You know, and then I went, well, if Alice was going to do a disco song, Disco Bloodbath Boogie Fever, it would be a total rip on disco. And we should make that part of his nightmare. And we should do it because we shouldn't do it. You know, in other words, you should challenge. We've never done that, so let's make Alice do it.
And talking about your sense of humour, the early albums were very dark.
Yeah.
But there was always that strain of humour in there, even if a lot of people didn't get the joke way back when.
Yeah. Well, we would do a line, and I would say, okay, I know 9 people in the world are going to get that joke. You know?
So do you feel that your more recent albums, as your career's evolved, your sense of humour has lightened somewhat?
I don't think it's light, because it's all over this album. You know, I mean, it's pretty dark in a lot of places. But, you know, I mean, I think the audience is a little bit let in on the fact that Alice is a character that I play. Whereas in the beginning, they didn't know that. As much as Ozzy plays a character. Ozzy plays the Ozzy character on stage, and Iggy plays Iggy on stage. Very few guys off stage are the same guys that you see on stage.
Sure.
Jim Morrison was pretty much the same guy off and on. He was this spaced out poet, you know, bent on self-destruction. But when even when I see guys like McCartney and Jagger, when they go on stage, they become this other character. They become this Mr. Personality guy. Off stage, they're a personality, but they're not like that. So Alice is just an extreme version of that, you know.
With such a huge body of work, how much pressure do you feel going into any new album?
Well, I think that you always, if you're a really creative writer, especially, you know, the power is in the writing. It's really, it's how good is the song is really going to be how successful everything is. Bob and I will not settle on a bad song. In other words, if it's got a great riff, but the lyric doesn't quite fit, and it's not like this, we just leave it off. There's 2 or 3 songs that are sitting in the bin right now, I mean, maybe for later, that I love the riffs on it, or I love the melody line, but it's not a complete song, so it didn't make the album. There's a song called My Favorite Mutation that is, I mean, it's one of my favorite songs, and it just didn't fit the album. It didn't fit, we hadn't finished it yet, somehow. So you have to leave those back. You
It's
know,
a cool title.
it's really a good title. You know, You're My Favorite Mutation. But you know, again, it's Bob Ezrin really does call for. He says we can't write a riff song. We can write a great riff as long as the melody line and the lyric are married to it. And you can sit at a piano and sing that verse, the B section and the chorus, like a song, rather than here's the verse and it's just one note. Because a lot of rock and a lot of what's passing for rock right now is just a one note, kind of you're screaming at somebody. It's not a song. You know, I mean, it's something, but it's not a song.
You've been so influential over the last 40-odd years. Of all your imitators, who has impressed you the most?
Well, I think Rob Zombie's the closest, even though, because he's done the same thing I've done, and strangely enough, same as Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga has done the same. She created Lady Gaga the way I created Alice. It's a part of her, but it's another part. It's a more animated part of her. The same way as Alice is a more animated part of me. We write songs for those characters, then we perform the songs as those characters. It's exactly what Gaga does. Different kind of music, but she does a great job of it. I mean, she's really created something unusual, you know. Rob Zombie and I have the same sense of humor when it comes to the fact that horror movies are generally pretty funny. You know, I mean, when you're sitting there and the guy, I was watching The Evil Dead, and I'm going, can this get any bloodier? I said, this movie is just, and then a pipe breaks, and he's covered in blood again, and I started laughing so loud, because I said, yes, it can get bloodier, and it's so over the top that it has to make you laugh.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, if you're not laughing at Final Destination 5, have you seen that yet?
No, not that one.
I was laughing out loud, and my wife, who's a ballerina, has the same sense of humor. She's this, you know, classical music ballerina, and she was laughing her head off because the deaths were so over the top, and it took 15 things to happen for this death to happen that you were just laughing because it was so. But you know, most people out there were going, oh, you know, and we were sitting there going, ah, you know. And I think that you must look at horror movies as comedies. You know, very few horror movies don't have sense of it. The Exorcist didn't have a sense of humor, and that's what made it so scary. Here's a little girl being possessed by a demon, and she's saying things that a little girl should never say because she's possessed by this. And then you think about it and you think, that's possible. And that's what's scary about it, is the fact that could happen.
Yeah.
Demonic possession could happen. Whereas Freddy Krueger, come on, you know, I watch those movies because I want to see they set it up so that every kid you hated in high school gets killed.
Absolutely.
You know, the football captain of the football team that used to put you in the locker, the cheerleader that wouldn't go out with you. They all meet the most horrendous deaths. And you start rooting for Jason because he's killing all these people that you hated in high school. You know, and you start going, he's my hero, I love this guy. So really, they kind of work in a backwards situation. You know, Jason and Michael Myers and, you know, and Freddy become your heroes. They're eliminating all these people you hated.
If you could use Alice to change one thing in the world, what would it be?
Well, for one thing, I think that what we did do was important. Rock was getting stale. I think rock visually was getting stale. I looked around and the Who were exciting and the Stones were exciting. Most other bands were not very exciting. They wrote great songs, but they didn't do anything. They just stood there. And I think that bringing a villain into the scene, a villain that was going to give you a show, was important for rock and roll, because it did begat Kiss, begat Bowie, begat all these other acts that now are fun to watch. That there was nothing like that before Alice.
Absolutely not. It's revolutionised.
So to me, I think that's really what I brought to the table, and I think it still works.
The PMRC claimed to be battling against a degradation of morality way back in the 80s, and Alice was one of many targets. Now that we see respect for others and moral standard sort of sliding a lot in society, do you think that they maybe had the right idea but were going after the wrong target?
Well, first of all, any child psychology 101 says if you tell the kid that they can't see something, they're going to want it. PMRC could not have been more important for sales of records. Bands that wouldn't have sold records, kids would see PMRC, I'm buying that. I mean, it was the child psychology. Come on, how silly are these people? They played right into the hands of, NWA and groups like that.
I've heard of bands actually wanting to get a sticker.
Oh, we would be, in fact, when we got banned in England, that was the greatest thing that ever happened to us. Our record went right to #1. We sold out every ticket in Wembley because people said, if this thing is so scary that they don't want us to see it, I got to go see it. You know what I mean? Any time that you ban something, you immediately say, you tell people, you really should see this. Because my curiosity's up. It's so bad that I can't see it. I gotta go see it.
Alice Cooper, the character, is an icon, instantly recognisable around the world. Do you ever crave anonymity?
Well, I think that I'm very fortunate in the fact that Alice, the longevity of Alice is amazing to me. The fact that 45 years later we're still packing places, selling records, and people are still, they now kind of treat Alice as a sort of like woven into the fabric of Americana or the music scene. So that now we're little treasures. Ozzy and Alice and people that have lasted 45 years are now kind of revered. I always said, I remember when I was young and dangerous, now I'm older and lovable.
Something changed somewhere along the line.
I think what it was the fact that the shock value again. When CNN became CNN,